Hello and welcome back for day 360. Today we will be reading from the Apocryphal book of 2nd Maccabees, chapters 3 and 4, the Apocryphal book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 46, and Revelation, chapter 17. 2nd Maccabees, chapter 3. Now when the holy city was inhabited with all peace, and the laws were kept very well, because of the godliness of Onias the high priest, and his hatred of wickedness, it came to pass that even the kings themselves did honor the place, and magnify the temple with their best gifts, insomuch that Seleucus of Asia, of his own revenues, bare all the costs belonging to the service of the sacrifices, but one Simon of the tribe of Benjamin, who was made governor of the temple, fell out with the high priest about disorder in the city, and when he could not overcome Onias, he gat him to Apollonius, the son of Thersaeus, who then was governor of Seleucia and Phoenice, and told him that the treasury in Jerusalem was full of infinite sums of money, so that the multitude of their riches, which did not pertain to the account of the sacrifices, was innumerable, and that it was possible to bring all into the king's hand. Now when Apollonius came to the king, and had shewed him of the money whereof he was told, the king chose out Heliodorus, his treasurer, and sent him with a commandment to bring him the foresaid money. So forthwith Heliodorus took his journey under a color of visiting the cities of Seleucia and Phoenice, but indeed to fulfill the king's purpose. And when he was come to Jerusalem, and had been courteously received of the high priest of the city, he told him what intelligence was given of the money, and declared wherefore he came, and asked if these things were so indeed. Then the high priest told him that there was such money laid up for the relief of widows and fatherless children, and that some of it belonged to Hyrcanus, son of Tobias, a man of great dignity, and not as that wicked Simon had misinformed, the sum whereof in all was 400 talents of silver, and 200 of gold, and that it was altogether impossible that such wrongs should be done unto them, that had committed it to the holiness of the place, and to the majesty and inviolable sanctity of the temple, honored over all the world. But Heliodorus, because of the king's commandment given him, said, that in any wise it must be brought into the king's treasury. So at the day which he appointed, he entered in to order this matter, wherefore there was no small agony throughout the whole city. But the priests, prostrating themselves before the altar in their priest's vestments, called unto heaven upon him that made a law concerning things given to he kept, that they should safely be preserved for such as had committed them to be kept. Then whoso had looked the high priest in the face, it would have wounded his heart, for his countenance and the changing of his color declared the inward agony of his mind. For the man was so compassed with fear and horror of the body, that it was manifest to them that looked upon him what sorrow he had now in his heart. Others ran flocking out of their houses to the general supplication, because the place was like to come into contempt, and the women, girt with sackcloth under their breasts, abounded in the streets, and the virgins that were kept in ran, some to the gates, and some to the walls, and others looked out of the windows, and all, holding their hands toward heaven, made supplication. Then it would have pitied a man to see the falling down of the multitude of all sorts, and the fear of the high priest being in such an agony. They then called upon the Almighty Lord to keep the things committed of trust safe and sure for those that had committed them. Nevertheless, Heliodorus executed that which was decreed. Now as he was there present himself with his guard about the treasury, the Lord of spirits and the Prince of all power caused a great apparition, so that all that presumed to come in with him were astonished at the power of God, and fainted, and were sore afraid. For there appeared unto them an horse, with a terrible rider upon him, and adorned with a very fair covering. And he ran fiercely, and smote at Heliodorus with his forefeet, and it seemed that he that sat upon the horse had complete harness of gold. Moreover, 2 other young men appeared before him, notable in strength, excellent in beauty, and comely in apparel, who stood by him on either side, and scourged him continually, and gave him many sore stripes. And Heliodorus fell suddenly unto the ground, and was compassed with great darkness. But they that were with him took him up, and put him into a litter. Thus him, that lately came with a great train, and with all his guard, into the said treasury, they carried out, being unable to help himself with his weapons, and manifestly they acknowledged the power of God. For he by the hand of God was cast down, and lay speechless, without all hope of life. But they praised the Lord, that had miraculously honored his own place. For the temple, which is a little afore, was full of fear and trouble, when the Almighty Lord appeared, was filled with joy and gladness. Then straightway certain of Heliodorus' friends prayed Ananias that he would call upon the Most High to grant him his life, who lay ready to give up the ghost. So the high priest, suspecting lest the king should misconceive that some treachery had been done to Heliodorus by the Jews, offered a sacrifice for the health of the man. Now as the high priest was making an atonement, the same young men, in the same clothing, appeared, and stood beside Heliodorus, saying, Give Onias the high priest great thanks, insomuch as for his sake the Lord hath granted thee life, and seeing that thou hast been scourged from heaven, declare unto all men the mighty power of God. And when they had spoken these words, they appeared no more. So Heliodorus, after he had offered sacrifice unto the Lord, and made great vows unto him that had saved his life, and saluted Onias, returned with his host to the king. Then testified he to all men the works of the great God, which he had seen with his eyes. And when the king Heliodorus, who might be a fit man to be sent yet once again to Jerusalem, he said, If thou hast any enemy or traitor, send him thither, and thou shalt receive him well scourged, if he escape with his life. For in that place, no doubt, there is an especial power of God. For he that dwelleth in heaven hath his eye on that place, and defendeth it, and he beateth and destroyeth them that come to hurt it. And the things concerning Heliodorus and the keeping of the sanctuary fell out on this sort. 2 Maccabees chapter 4. This Simon now, of whom we spake afore, having been a betrayer of the money, and of his country, slandered Onias, as if he had terrified Heliodorus, and been the worker of these evils. Thus, when he bold to call him a traitor, that had deserved well of the city, and tendered his own nation, and was so zealous of the laws, but when their hatred went so far, that by one of Simon's faction murders were committed, Onias, seeing the danger of this contention, and that Apollonius, as being the governor of Seleucia and Phoenice, did rage and increase Simon's malice, he went to the king, not to be an accuser of his countrymen, but seeking the good of all, both public and private, for he saw that it was impossible that the state should continue quiet, and Simon leave his folly, unless the king did look thereunto. But after the death of Seleucus, when Antiochus, called Epiphanes, took the kingdom, Jason the brother of Onias labored underhand to be high priest, promising unto the king by intercession 360 talents of silver, and of another revenue 80 talents. Beside this, he promised to assign 150 more, if he might have license to set him up a place for exercise, and for the training up of youth in the fashions of the heathen, and to write them of Jerusalem by the name of Antiochians, which when the king had granted, and he had gotten into his hand the rule, he forthwith brought his own nation to Greekish fashion, and the royal privileges granted of special favor to the Jews by the means of John, the father of Eupolemus, who went ambassador to Rome for amity and aid, he took away, and putting down the governments which were according to the law, he brought up new customs against the law, for he built gladly a place of exercise under the tower itself, and brought the chief young men under his subjection, and made them wear a hat. Now such was the height of Greek fashions, and increase of heathenish matters, through the exceeding profaneness of Jason, that ungodly wretch, and no high priest, that the priests had no courage to serve any more at the altar, but despising the temple, and neglecting the sacrifices, hastened to be partakers of the unlawful allowance in the place of exercise. After the game of discus called them forth, not setting by the honors of their fathers, but liking the glory of the Grecians best of all, by reason wherefore sore calamity came upon them, for they had them to be their enemies and avengers, whose custom they followed so earnestly, and unto whom they desired to be like in all things. For it is not a light thing to do wickedly against the laws of God, but the time following shall declare these things. Now when the game that was used every 5th year was kept at Tyrus, the king being present, this ungracious Jason sent special messengers from Jerusalem, who were Antiochians, to carry 300 drams of silver to the sacrifice of Hercules, which even the bearers thereof thought fit not to bestow upon the sacrifice, because it was not convenient, but to be reserved for other charges. This money then, in regard of the sender, was appointed to Hercules' sacrifice, but because of the bearers thereof, it was employed to the making of galleys. Now when Apollonius, the son of Menestheus, was sent into Egypt for the coronation of King Ptolemaeus, Philometor, Antiochus, understanding him not to be well affected to his affairs, provided for his own safety, whereupon he came to Joppa, and from thence to Jerusalem, where he was honorably received of Jason and of the city, and was brought in with torch alight, and with great shoutings, and so afterward went with his host unto Phoenice. 3 years afterward Jason sent Menelaus, the aforesaid Simon's brother, to bear the money unto the king, and to put him in mind of certain necessary matters. But he being brought to the presence of the king, when he had magnified him for the glorious appearance of his power, got the priesthood to himself, offering more than Jason by 300 talents of silver. So he came with the king's mandate, bringing nothing worthy the high priesthood, but having the fury of a cruel tyrant and the rage of a savage beast. Then Jason, who had undermined his own brother, being undermined by another, was compelled to flee into the country of the Ammonites. So Menelaus got the principality, but as for the money that he had promised unto the king, he took no good order for it, albeit Sostratus, the ruler of the castle, required it, for unto him appertained the gathering of the customs, wherefore they were both called before the king. Now Menelaus left his brother Lysimachus in his stead in the priesthood, and Sostratus left Crates, who was governor of the Cyprians. While those things were in doing, they of Tarsus and Malos made insurrection, because they were given to the king's concubine, called Antiochus. Then came the king in all haste to appease matters, leaving Andronicus, a man in authority, for his deputy. Now Menelaus, supposing that he had gotten a convenient time, stole certain vessels of gold out of the temple, and gave some of them to Andronicus, and some he sold into Tyrus and the cities round about, which when Onias knew of a surety, he reproved him, and withdrew himself into a sanctuary at Daphne, that lieth by Antiochia. Wherefore Menelaus, taking Andronicus apart, prayed him to get Onias into his hands, who being persuaded thereunto, and coming to Onias in deceit, gave him his right hand with oaths, and though he were suspected by him, yet persuaded he him to come forth of the sanctuary, whom forthwith he shut up without regard of justice, for the which cause not only the Jews, but many also of other nations, took great indignation, and were much grieved for the unjust murder of the man. And when the king was come again from the places about Cilicia, the Jews that were in the city, and certain of the Greeks that abhorred the fact also, complained because Onias was slain without cause. Therefore Antiochus was heartily sorry, and moved to pity, and wept, because of the sober and modest behavior of him that was dead. And being kindled with anger, forthwith he took away Andronicus his purple, and rent off his clothes, and leading him through the whole city unto that very place, where he had committed impiety against Onias, there slew he the cursed murderer. Thus the Lord rewarded him his punishment, as he had deserved. Now when many sacrileges had been committed in the city by Lysimachus with the content of Menelaus, and the fruit thereof was spread abroad, the multitude gathered themselves together against Lysimachus, many vessels of gold being already carried away. Whereupon the common people rising, and being filled with rage, Lysimachus armed about 3,000 men, and being first to offer violence, one Araunus being the leader, a man far gone in years, and no less in folly. They then, seeing the attempt of Lysimachus, some of them caught stones, some clubs, others taking handfuls of dust that was next at hand, cast them all together upon Lysimachus, and those that sat upon them. Thus many of them they wounded, and some they struck to the ground, and all of them they forced to flee. But as for the church robber himself, him they killed beside the treasury. Of these matters, therefore, there was an accusation laid against Menelaus. Now when the king came to Tyrus, 3 men that were sent from the Senate pleaded the cause before him. But Menelaus, being now convicted, promised Ptolemy the son of Dorymenes to give him much money, if he would pacify the king toward him. Whereupon Ptolemy, taking the king aside into a certain gallery, as it were to take the air, brought him to be of another mind, insomuch that he discharged Menelaus from the accusations, who, notwithstanding, was cause of all the mischief, and those poor men, who, if they had told their cause, yea, before the Scythians, should have been judged innocent, them he condemned to death. Thus they that followed the matter for the city, and for the people, and for the holy vessels, did soon suffer unjust punishment. Wherefore even they of Tyrus, moved with hatred of that wicked deed, caused them to be honorably buried. And so through the covetousness of them that were of power, Menelaus remained still in authority, increasing in malice, and being a great traitor to the citizens. The Apocryphal Book of Ecclesiasticus, chapter 46. Jesus, the son of Nevaeh, was valiant in the wars, and was the successor of Moses in prophecies, who according to his name was made great for the saving of the elect of God, and taking vengeance of the enemies that rose up against them, that he might set Israel in their inheritance. How great glory gat he, when he did lift up his hands, and stretched out his sword against the cities, who before him so stood to it, for the Lord himself brought his enemies unto him. Did not the sun go back by his means, and was not one day as long as 2? He called upon the Most High Lord, when the enemies pressed upon him on every side, and the great Lord heard him. And with hailstones of mighty power, he made the battle to fall violently upon the nations, and in the descent of Beth-horon, he destroyed them that resisted, that the nations might know all their strength, because he fought in the sight of the Lord, and he followed the Mighty One. In the time of Moses also, he did a work of mercy, he and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, in that they withstood the congregation, and withheld the people from sin, and appeased the wicked murmuring. And of 600,000 people on foot, they too were preserved to bring them into the heritage, even unto the land that floweth with milk and honey. The Lord gave strength also unto Caleb, which remained with him unto his old age, so that he entered upon the high places of the land, and his seed obtained it for an heritage, that all the children of Israel might see that it is good to follow the Lord. And concerning the judges, every one by name, whose heart went not a whoring, nor departed from the Lord, let their memory be blessed. Let their bones flourish out of their place, and let the name of them that were honored be continued upon their children. Samuel, the prophet of the Lord, beloved of his Lord, established a kingdom, and anointed princes over his people. By the law of the Lord, he judged the congregation, and the Lord had respect unto Jacob. By his faithfulness he was found a true prophet, and by his word he was known to be faithful in vision. He called upon the mighty Lord when his enemies pressed upon him on every side, when he offered the sucking lamb, and the Lord thundered from heaven, and with a great noise made his voice to be heard. And he destroyed the rulers of the Tyrians, and all the princes of the Philistines, and before his long sleep he made protestations in the sight of the Lord and his anointed. I have not taken any man's goods, so much as a shoe, and no man did accuse him. And after his death he prophesied, and shewed the king his end, and lifted up his voice from the earth in prophecy, to blot out the wickedness of the people. Revelation chapter 17. And there came one of the 7 angels, which had the 7 vials, and talked with me, saying unto me, Come hither, I will shew unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. So he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness, and I saw a woman sit upon a scarlet-colored beast, full of names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And the woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet color, and decked with gold and precious stones and pearls, having a golden cup in her hand, full of abominations and filthiness of her fornication. And upon her forehead was a name written, Mystery, Babylon the Great, the mother of harlots and abominations of the earth. And I saw the woman drunken with the blood of the saints, and with the blood of the martyrs of Jesus. And when I saw her, I wondered with great admiration. And the angel said unto me, Wherefore didst thou marvel? I will tell thee the mystery of the woman, and of the beast that carrieth her, which hath the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that thou sawest was, and is not, and shall ascend out of the bottomless pit, and go into perdition. And they that dwell on the earth shall wonder, whose names were not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, when they behold the beast that was, and is not, and yet is. And here is the mind which hath wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains, on which the woman sitteth. And there are 7 kings, 5 are fallen, and 1 is, and the other is not yet come. And when he cometh, he must continue a short space. And the beast that was, and is not, even he is the 8th, and is of the 7, and goeth into perdition. And the 10 horns which thou sawest are 10 kings, which have received no kingdom as yet, but receive power as kings 1 hour with the beast. These have one mind, and shall give their power and strength unto the beast. These shall make war with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them. For he is Lord of lords, and King of kings, and they that are with him are called, and chosen, and faithful. And he saith unto me, The waters which thou sawest, where the whore sitteth, are peoples, and multitudes, and nations, and tongues. And the 10 horns which thou sawest upon the beast, these shall hate the whore, and shall make her desolate and naked, and shall eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For God hath put in their hearts to fulfill his will, and to agree, and give their kingdom unto the beast, until the words of God shall be fulfilled. And the woman which thou sawest is that great city, which reigned over the kings of the earth. That concludes our reading for the day. May the Lord bless everyone listening with strength, health, and courage, today and always.